The day he took our baby away, I had pictured that moment so many times. The day I'd hold our baby in my arms. The day my husband would kiss my forehead, tears in his eyes, and say, "You did it, you're amazing." But that's not how it happened. That's not how it ever happened. Instead, the hospital room was cold. Too quiet. I remember the silence more than the pain. The way the nurses avoided my eyes. The way the doctor cleared his throat before speaking. "We've spoken with your husband. He's made arrangements." Arrangements? I was still bleeding, still dizzy from labor, still reaching for a baby that had been taken before I could even whisper, "Hello?" "What arrangements?" I croaked. They didn't answer me, just wheeled me into recovery and alone. The nurse finally came hours later. I remember the way she gently placed her hand on my shoulder. I remember the look in her eyes. Pity, not comfort. "Your husband said it would be best if he took the baby home. That you needed time. That you weren't ready." I blinked. "What are you talking about? I'm her mother." "He said there were complications, emotional ones. He brought paperwork." I sat up, heart pounding. "Where's my baby?" But it was too late. They had let him leave. With her. I couldn't breathe. Not just from the betrayal, but from the shock of how easily they had erased me. Like my pain, my labor, my motherhood, me meant nothing. I tried calling him. Over and over. No answer. Then finally, a text. "This is for the best. You weren't in a place to raise a child. I'm sorry." That was it. No name. No photo. No apology. Just a decision. He didn't come back. Not that day. Not the next. Not even when I was discharged, standing outside the hospital with empty arms and a hollow chest. My sister came to get me. She held me like I was a child. I didn't speak the whole ride home. Didn't eat for days. The milk came in anyway. My body didn't understand she was gone. It waited for cries that never came. And I sat on the bathroom floor, crying into towels, trying to muffle the ache of a mother without her child. I tried to fight. I tried lawyers. But he had it all planned. He told the court I had a history of depression, which I did. Years ago during college, he exaggerated everything. Said I was mentally unstable. Said he was protecting our child. He had the money, the connections, and I had nothing but pain. The judge ruled in his favor. Temporary full custody granted to him. Supervised visits, maybe. But they never happened, because he cut me out completely. Months passed, then years, and still not a word. No photos, no updates, not even her name. I didn't even get to name her. He changed it, and all I had left was the sound of a cry I only heard once in that cold delivery room. Everyone told me to move on, to heal, to let go. But how do you let go of something you never even got to hold? Then one afternoon, 5 years later, I was walking through the park with a coffee in hand, trying to breathe, trying to feel something again, and I saw her. A little girl with soft brown curls, a familiar tilt to her head. She laughed and pointed at a balloon vendor. Beside her was a woman I didn't recognize, holding her hand. And next to them, Ryan, smiling, laughing, as if nothing ever happened, as if he hadn't stolen 5 years of motherhood from me, as if that little girl wasn't mine. He said I wasn't stable enough to be a mom. I stood there, frozen, coffee slipping from my hand. The laughter across the park might as well have been thunder. That was my child, no doubt, no mistake. 5 years had passed, but a mother knows. The curve of her cheeks, the way she tilted her head when she listened, even the way she reached for the woman beside her. Not me. And Ryan laughing like he hadn't stolen 5 years of my life. 5 years of her life. I didn't approach them. I couldn't. Not because I didn't want to, but because I was afraid that if I did, they'd disappear. Like a dream I wasn't allowed to wake up from. So I walked away. But I wasn't broken this time. I was burning. That night, I pulled out the old box I had buried deep in my closet. Court documents, medical records, letters that were never answered. The journal I kept during my pregnancy, where every entry ended with, "I can't wait to meet you." I reread everything. Every lie he told, every legal tactic he used, every accusation twisted from half-truths. He painted me as unstable, because of therapy, because I once took time off work for anxiety, because I cried after losing my first pregnancy. He called that weakness, but it was never about my stability. It was always about control. He was charming in court. Dressed in gray suits, spoke with the calm of a man who rehearsed every word. He smiled at the judge, said I was fragile, said he loved me dearly, but she needs help before she can safely be a parent. And the judge bought it, because charm beats grief in a courtroom. Every single time. I was given no chance to fight back, no lawyer strong enough, no family loud enough, and I was drowning in postpartum pain while he stood on the shore waving my daughter away. But now I had something else. Proof. that he was still in town, that he was raising our daughter with a woman who wasn't even part of the custody discussion. And maybe I couldn't undo what he did. Maybe I'd never get back the baby he stole, but I could tell the truth. Loud, clear, unapologetic. I went back to the lawyer who once told me I had no case. He looked at me the same way at first, pity, doubt. But then I showed him the photo I took in the park. Ryan, the girl, the new woman. She's not the biological mother, I said. She was never vetted, never approved, but she's raising my daughter. The lawyer leaned back, silent, then said the words I'd waited years to hear. We might have a shot. We began building the case, gathered evidence, witness testimonies, medical records that showed I'd been stable for years, holding down a job, attending therapy, volunteering with children. The woman he left me for? Not so spotless. A history of aliases. An ex-husband with a restraining order. It was all there, just waiting to be uncovered. And most of all, I had my journal. The entries, the ultrasound photos, the list of names I'd wanted to give her. Wait in serum. One circled in red. What's say? Lena, my lawyer said. If we push forward, you'll have to see him again. Are you ready for that? I looked at him. Then opened my phone, pulled up the photo again. My daughter, Lena, laughing with a woman who wasn't her mother. I've been ready since the day he stole her from my arms. I saw them in the park, and she called her mom. I wasn't supposed to go back to that park. It was too painful, too raw, too soon, but I went anyway. Because something inside me whispered, you've waited 5 years. What's 5 more minutes of pain if it means seeing her again? I sat on the same bench, wore sunglasses, tied my hair back, and tried to breathe like I wasn't falling apart. Then I saw her. Same curls, same bounce in her step, same curious eyes that once looked up at me for a split second before she was taken away. She was wearing a little yellow dress. She twirled as she ran toward the ice cream cart. And then, that voice. Mommy, can I have chocolate? I froze. Not because of the question, but because of who she said it to. The woman? The same one I saw the week before. She smiled, pulled out cash, and ruffled Lena's hair like they were made of the same blood. Anything for you, baby. My chest ached. Like something had been yanked from the inside and left hollow. She didn't know I was her real mother. She didn't even know I existed. I watched them laugh. Watched the woman wipe chocolate from her chin. Watched her say, you've got your daddy's smile. And Lena giggled, licking her cone, swinging her legs as they sat on the same bench I used to dream of sitting on with her. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was the lawyer. A simple message. We're ready to file. Your statement is all that's left. But I couldn't move. Because I was watching my baby call someone else mom. I wanted to scream, to rush over, to grab her and say, I am your mother. I carried you. I sang to you before you were born. I never stopped waiting. But what would that do? What if she got scared? What if she didn't believe me? What if she looked at me the way strangers do? I wiped tears behind my sunglasses. Then something happened. She looked around, just for a moment, and her eyes landed on me. Our eyes met, only for a second. But she smiled. Small, sweet, unknowing. She had no idea that the woman sitting across the path was the reason she was born. I smiled back, then stood up, and walked away, because I wasn't going to scare her. I wasn't going to break the truth into her world with panic and pain. I was going to do it the right way. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, pulled out the journal, the same one I wrote in when she was still inside me. I opened a blank page and wrote, Today I saw you again. You looked happy. You looked strong. You called someone else mom. And it shattered me. But I smiled anyway. Because your smile is worth more than my ego. And because one day I hope you'll call me mom too. Not because someone told you to, but because you chose me. Then I signed the affidavit, gave my statement, and officially began the process of reopening the custody case. He would fight back, I knew that. He had before. But this time I had proof. I had stability, and most of all, I had fire. I wasn't the broken woman he painted in court. I was a mother, and I was done being erased. He told her I was just an old friend. I knew the moment would come. The moment Ryan found out I was fighting back, and it didn't take long. 3 days after I submitted my statement, he showed up outside my apartment. Uninvited, unannounced. But I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. You've got some nerve, he hissed. You've got some secrets, I shot back. He tried the old tactic first. Charm. The faint smile, the soft tone. Clara, we've both moved on. There's no need to dig all this back up. You moved on, I was left behind. His jaw tightened. He stepped closer. She's happy. She has a stable home. Why ruin that? I folded my arms. Because I'm her mother, and you stole that from both of us. He scoffed. You think barging into her life now will help her? She doesn't even know you. I leaned in. Then maybe she should. That was the moment his mask cracked. For a second, I saw it, the panic, and then the cruelty. She thinks you're a friend from the past. That's what I told her when she saw you in the park. My heart dropped. You told her I was, what, an old friend from college? Someone who knew her when she was little. He said it so casually. Like lying to a child was nothing new. Like rewriting history was his God-given right. You don't get to erase me, I said, voice shaking. Not again. She doesn't need confusion. She doesn't need trauma. She doesn't need you. That was it. That was the line that flipped a switch in me. She needs the truth. And whether you like it or not, it's coming. He stared at me, then laughed. Cold, arrogant. You really think a judge will reverse everything after 5 years? Try me. He stepped back. You're going to break her heart, Clara. I nodded slowly. No, you already did. I'm just going to help her heal. He left. But I knew it wasn't over. He was going to fight dirty. Try to bury me again. But this time I wasn't fighting alone. Later that week, I filed for court-ordered mediation, requested an official evaluation of the home environment, petitioned for partial custody, at least supervised visits. My lawyer was confident. We have leverage now. The fact that he never disclosed the woman raising your daughter? That's huge. Judges don't like deception. But paperwork was one thing. What hurt most was knowing that somewhere Lena believed I was just some old friend, someone passing by, a stranger with warm eyes and a familiar voice. Nothing more. That night, I wrote her another letter. I had no idea when I'd be able to give it to her. But I wrote anyway. Hi, sweetheart. You don't know me yet. Not the way I know you. But one day you will. And on that day, I hope you'll understand. I never left you. You were taken. But even when I couldn't be near you, I never stopped loving you. I was there at the beginning. I was there when you first kicked inside me. I was there when they placed you in a blanket I never got to hold. And now, I'm coming back. Not to ruin your world, but to show you who I really am. I sealed the letter, labeled it, for when she's ready. Because the truth may hurt, but silence wounds deeper. I started fighting back. Quietly, fiercely, I didn't storm into Lena's life. I stepped in carefully, quietly. Like a mother who knew that love isn't proven by blood or words, but by showing up. Every single time. The court didn't approve immediate visitation, but my lawyer suggested something else. Be visible. Find a way to enter her world without invading it. So I volunteered. At her school. At first, it was in the background. Sorting books at the library, helping in the art room. No direct contact. Just presence. The first time I saw her in the hallway, she didn't recognize me. Not fully. But she paused. Looked twice. Tilted her head. Then smiled. You look like someone I know, she said. I smiled back. Maybe I just have one of those faces. Every time after that, she looked for me. Waved when she saw me in the cafeteria. Pointed me out to friends. One day she said, "You always smell like oranges, like my favorite lotion." And I smiled because it was the same lotion I wore when I was pregnant. Ryan didn't know. Not yet. But the school did. They had to inform him I was part of the volunteer program. He tried to block it. But I had no criminal record, no restrictions, no reason for them to keep me out. Legally, I wasn't doing anything wrong. But emotionally, I was finally doing something right. Weeks passed. Then one afternoon, I got a note slipped into my locker. Yes, adults get lockers too when they help out enough. It was written in pink crayon. No name. Just, "You make me feel safe, like a person in my dreams. Are you sure we haven't met before?" I cried in the bathroom stall for 10 minutes. Because that was her. Lena, writing to me. Feeling the connection without even knowing why. I didn't respond directly. I couldn't, not yet. But I drew a smiley face on a sticky note and left it where she'd find it. She smiled when she saw it. And that smile gave me strength. That weekend, the court ordered Ryan to attend a mediation session with me. He arrived smug, confident. But I wasn't the broken woman he left behind. I sat up straight, spoke clearly, held eye contact. The mediator asked, "Ms. Jensen, what exactly are you requesting?" Access, time, a chance to rebuild a relationship that was stolen. Ryan scoffed. "This is just emotional manipulation. She's inserting herself into Lena's life at school now. I'm volunteering," I said, "not hiding in bushes." She's confused. "No, you are. She feels something. You can lie to her, but her heart still knows me." The mediator looked between us, then wrote something down. "The court will decide next week if supervised visitation is appropriate." Ryan stood to leave. "You won't win." I looked him straight in the eye. I already did. Because she's starting to remember me. Even without the words. Later that night, I got an email. From the school counselor. She said Lena had mentioned me. Said I made her feel warm inside. Said she dreamt of someone holding her and singing to her in a voice she couldn't place. She asked if I believed in dreams that come from before we're born. I clutched my phone. Because I used to sing to her every night in the womb. Same melody, same words. She remembered. Somewhere deep inside her, she remembered me. She found out who I really was. It started with a fever. Lena had caught a cold that week. Nothing serious, just a cough, a sore throat. But one night it spiked. Hi, dangerous. The kind that makes any parent panic. She was with Ryan and the woman. And according to the nurse at the emergency room, Lena kept repeating something as they tried to lower her temperature. A name. Mine. Mama Clara, I want Mama Clara. Ryan turned pale. The woman didn't understand. She asked, "Who is Mama Clara?" Ryan didn't answer. He didn't have to, because Lena kept saying it, over and over, in her delirium. They gave her fluids, brought the fever down, and as she drifted to sleep, still murmuring my name, the woman finally confronted him. She demanded answers, and that's when it unraveled. He told her bits of the truth, enough to make her question everything. And then, Lena woke up. "Daddy," she said softly, "who's Clara?" He froze. The woman stared at him. Lena sat up slowly, eyes foggy but clear enough to hold pain. "She smells like oranges. She sings like the lady in my dreams." "Is she real?" Ryan didn't answer. So the woman did. She left the hospital room, grabbed Lena's backpack, and pulled out her drawing folder. She'd seen Lena sketch something weeks ago. A face that wasn't hers, but one Lena insisted was someone I used to know. She flipped through the pages until she found it, held it up, and showed it to Ryan. "This is her, isn't it?" He nodded, slow, ashamed, and finally whispered, "Yes, that's her mother." Lena stared. "You said Mommy died." "I never said that," Ryan muttered. "You didn't have to," she whispered. "You just never said she was alive." Later that week, I got the call. From the woman. "She knows," she said quietly. "I didn't want to lie anymore." "What did he say?" "Not much, but it's too late for silence now. She told me Lena wanted to see me. Not in a courtroom, not in supervised visits, just as herself. We met at a neutral center. When Lena walked into the room, she looked different. Not just taller, not just older, but aware. She sat across from me, twirled the string of her hoodie, then said, "I saw a picture of you once, in a box. Daddy didn't know I found it. I kept it under my pillow because something inside me said, 'You belong to her.'" Tears welled in my eyes. But I didn't cry yet, because she wasn't done. "I don't remember everything. Just a voice, a song." She hummed it, off-key, but I knew it. "You used to sing that to me, didn't you?" I nodded. "Every night." She smiled, then stood up, walked over, and whispered, "Can I hug you now? Or is that not allowed yet?" I opened my arms without a word. And for the first time in 5 years, I held my daughter. Not in dreams, not in memory, but in reality. Warm, real, breathing. And she held me back. The woman watched from the door. She was crying too. Not out of jealousy, but relief. Because even she knew. Truth feels better than lies. He tried to take her again, but this time I was ready. Ryan lost control the day Lena hugged me. I saw it in his face, the fear, the panic, the cracking ego of a man who had built his power on silence and sealed files. And now his daughter, had spoken. With arms, with eyes, with the word he thought he had buried. "Mom." That night, I received an email from my lawyer. Emergency motion filed by Ryan. Requesting to block contact immediately, citing emotional manipulation. My hands trembled. Not from fear, but fury. He was doing it again. Twisting love into danger, twisting memory into threat. He wanted the court to believe I was a stranger with emotional influence. That Lena was too young to decide who she loved. But this time, I had receipts. Video logs of our meetings. Letters from the school counselor. Drawings Lena had made of me, the orange-scented lady who sings my song. A signed statement from the woman he lived with. And Lena's own words, recorded with consent. I remember her voice. "I don't want to be kept away anymore." Yeah. The court date was set within days. Ryan came in polished as always. Gray suit. Confident stride. But he couldn't hide the tightness in his jaw. He knew. This time he didn't control the narrative. The judge looked at me. "Ms. Jensen, why do you believe supervised contact is no longer necessary?" "Because she knows who I am now. Because I never left her by choice. Because I am her mother. Legally, biologically, and emotionally." Then Ryan spoke. "Your Honor, this is destabilizing to my daughter. She's confused. This woman, Clara, is manipulating her with stories and songs." My lawyer stood. "Then explain why she calls her Mama Clara in her sleep. Explain why she drew her face before she even knew her name." explain the consistency of a child's memory that never had permission to exist. Ryan's lawyer tried to object, but the judge raised her hand. Silence. Then she turned to Ryan. You concealed the mother's identity. You presented an incomplete narrative to this court years ago. Do you deny that Ms. Jensen was never proven unfit, but simply overwhelmed and unrepresented? Ryan didn't answer, because he couldn't. The judge continued, the court acknowledges that a child's well-being is paramount, and that includes her right to the truth. Temporary custody will be shared. Ms. Jensen is granted weekends and after-school visitation, supervised for 60 days. If no concerns arise, joint legal custody will be revisited. I didn't cry, not in the courtroom. But when I walked out that day, Lena was waiting in the hallway with the woman. She ran to me, jumped into my arms. Do I get to go home with you sometimes now? I held her tighter. Yes, baby, you get to come home. That night we cooked spaghetti, the way I imagined we would 5 years ago. She told me about her favorite show, asked if I could braid her hair, then whispered as she drifted to sleep, you sing better in real life than in my dreams. I smiled through tears. That's because you're finally here, and I was ready now. Not just legally, not just emotionally, but soul-deep ready. To fight, to love, to raise her, day by day. She chose me and said you were always my real mom. There's something sacred about Sunday mornings, especially when you wake up and hear a little voice humming from the kitchen. Lena was standing on a stool, trying to spread peanut butter on toast. She was making breakfast, for me. You always cook for me, she said with a grin. So today it's my turn. The toast was burnt, the peanut butter lopsided, and it was the best meal I'd ever had in my life. After breakfast, she pulled out her school project, a family tree. She was supposed to write the names of her parents, guardians, and people she considered family. I watched her pause at the mother section. Then slowly, she wrote, Clara Jensen. She looked up at me, eyes soft, brave. Is it okay if I write your name? Sweetheart, I said, voice trembling. You don't need my permission to love me. She smiled. Good, because I already do. A few weeks later, the final custody hearing arrived. By then, Lena had spent several weekends with me. We had built a rhythm. Movie nights, pancake Saturdays, bedtime stories where she got to pick 3 books. No arguments. She had her own room now, her own toothbrush, her own place, in my heart and my home. In court, the judge asked Lena a question, a gentle one. Do you know who Ms. Jensen is? Lena nodded confidently. She's my mom. And do you feel safe with her? More than safe. I feel like I belong. Ryan didn't object. He sat with his hands clenched, eyes down. He knew. He had lost, not in a game of custody, but in a battle of truth. Because Lena had chosen. The judge finalized joint legal custody. Equal parenting time. With an open door to full custody review based on Lena's wishes as she grew older. But the real victory didn't happen in court. It happened that evening, back home, when Lena asked to open the box I'd kept for years. The one labeled for her. We sat on the floor. Floor, cross-legged. She pulled out the ultrasound photos. The tiny pink socks I bought the day I found out she was a girl. The handwritten letters I wrote during my pregnancy. And the recording of her heartbeat from that one magical doctor visit. She listened, silent, eyes wide, then said, So all this time I was never really gone from you? I shook my head. Never. You were always with me, even when the world said I didn't deserve to be your mom. I never stopped being one. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I remember the sound of your heart. She whispered, It's the same one I heard in my dreams. And that's when I cried. Not from pain, but from finally being whole. She reached into the box one last time, pulled out the necklace I had worn in the delivery room, the one I never wore again. Until now. Can I keep this? She asked. It's already yours, I said. She placed it around her neck like it was the most valuable thing in the world. Later that night, as I tucked her into bed, she took my hand and whispered, You were always my real mom, even when I didn't know your name. And that's how healing sounds. Not with grand speeches, not with final verdicts, but with the voice of a child. Choosing love. The story doesn't end here. It begins again every morning she wakes up in my home. Every time she calls out mom. Every time she reaches for my hand. Because I wasn't given the chance to be there from day one. But I'm here now, and I will never let go again. End of part 8. Final chapter. Thank you for listening. Guess what? Sometimes love doesn't need permission to be true. It just needs the courage to keep showing up. Some people leave scars, others leave lessons. Burn and reborn stories that break you, then rebuild you.